Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. We bring you the right information to empower you, the SME entrepreneur. Tonight, as part of Broadcast1 presents Disruptors, two exclusive conversations. First up is Randstad. On the other side of a short break, NTT Data Services in focus tonight. Recently named as the #1 HR services provider anywhere in the world, Randstad definitely knows a thing or two when it comes to innovation and disruption in their market space. I caught up with Paul Dupuis. He's the CEO of Randstad to understand really how they're innovating, to understand the use of technology when it comes to HR and staffing solutions, as well as what some of the plans are for the future. Take a listen. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us here. And we're talking about India's most disruptive companies. Randstad has been named as the best HR company across the world. We'll come and talk about that.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about Randstad, the company, and also if you can, briefly talk to our viewers about what your own journey has been.
Sure. Well, maybe we'll start with the second question.
Sure.
I'm originally from Canada. I came to India almost 2 years ago after being in Japan for 22 years. Where I was MD of Randstad in Japan, and prior to that I was in Singapore and working across the region, Southeast Asia and so on. 7 countries in total where I was involved with M&A as well as starting up companies in our industry. And then had the opportunity to move to India in 2017. Randstad as a company, we're now 58 years old, arguably the pioneer in the industry when we talk about staffing and recruitment, founded in the Netherlands.
All right. I want to talk about, the fact that while staffing, especially in a country like India that's generating thousands of jobs and people coming into the workforce at least every month, you've been named as the most innovative and disruptive company, and we are talking about disruptors. Mm-hmm. What perhaps has helped you achieve that distinction?
Well, if we look at India and the current situation with the workforce in India, it's an interesting story. You first have the fastest growing economy in the world. Secondly, the fastest growing workforce in the world. 1 million people are entering the workforce in India. If we talk about OECD definition, that's 19 to 59 years old.
Okay.
So that's almost 13 million people per year entering into the workforce in India. It raises the question of jobs. And certainly this is on the agenda of the government with Skill India and Make in India.
Yeah.
And as a recruiting and staffing company, it also puts us in a bit of a challenging situation. How do we help these people find gainful employment, which is the right job, the right match for them? And of course, companies that want to grow in this very robust economy.
Okay, so maybe you can break it down for us in terms of the different verticals that you look at Randstad.
Sure. So we have our core business is what we call general staffing. That's temporary and contractual labor, and that's really at the heart of soul in what we do. And that keeps us in a large profile in India with 20 offices across the country.
Sure.
Globally at Randstad, we put about 680,000 people to work every day in temporary labor. Mm-hmm. In India, we have double-digit percentage of that. So a significant percentage right here in India, and growing, by the way. Then we also have something called Randstad Technologies, which is our IT, higher skilled temporary and contractual labor, so IT labor. And of course, on the permanent side, we also have our permanent recruitment business, which starts from junior to mid-career, right up to executive search.
We've had the chance to visit your facility in Chennai. If you can talk to our viewers briefly about the center and what you do there.
Sure. So we have some very innovative things happening in Chennai. In fact, we set up a shared service center in Chennai, which supports all of our solutions across India, our clients and our candidates. Mm-hmm. Also, we set up a Randstad Recruitment Center, which is a centralized sourcing center for pan-India. That helps us bridge the gap, particularly in speed and quality. And we're using a lot of interesting technology there as well. And we have plans to invest in our Chennai location.
How's the Indian market different from what you're seeing globally? You're someone who has a view as far as not just the Indian operations, but what's happening globally as well. How's India different?
So I recently attended our CEO conference in Canada, where our 39 countries gathered, and we talked about data points. There's no other country in the world that can say the fastest growing economy at north of 7% GDP, fastest growing workforce, and also the youngest workforce, now under 30, around 29 years old in India. So on top of that, of course, we have ease of doing business, increasing 23 positions, and then foreign direct investment, higher than it's ever been. Put all this together, India makes for a perfect storm when it comes to labor.
Sure.
again, we have a consumer, the young worker who's coming up into the workforce and the growing workforce gets disposable income through employment. So that also leads to an impact on the economy. So what we see in India is a large workforce growing from semi-skilled to skilled, yet we see the mismatch in the number of jobs that are available. So that's one of the unique challenges that India faces.
Okay, why is that, and what perhaps are you as a company doing to sort of ensure that while you have the numbers, you also have the quality?
Yeah. So on one hand, you would say that in the staffing HR services industry, India, in fact, is a dream market because we need a few ingredients in order to conduct business. One is we need an economy that's growing, so companies that are looking to grow and hire. Secondly, we need an employable workforce. Let's call it an eager workforce, and India certainly has that.
Sure.
The issue is the growth rate of the population is exceeding the growth rate of the economy. And so where do we come in as a recruiting and staffing firm? In fact, after 58 years of placing people into jobs in various forms, whether it was temporary or contractual or perm, we've started to look in the mirror a bit here and say, as Randstad, is it time for us to evolve and to get more involved with skilling and deploying as well? And so that's really connects well with the government's initiatives.
There was a study that the IT industry body NASCOM put out a few years ago saying that not more than 20 to 25% of all students who are coming out of Indian colleges today have the requisite skill sets for the jobs for which they're being hired. What really is the solution then?
Well, there's actually, from a macro perspective, there's another study done by E&Y that says out of the 5 million people that are coming out of higher education in India every year graduating, only 34% are employable. And we're talking about plug and play field readiness.
Sure.
And that's a real issue. So again, I go back to my comment about the role of a staffing firm. I think it's actually a triangle relationship. Okay. It's the corporate, the company that's hiring, the company that's growing, and that really puts people at the center of what they do. Because every company will say to us the most important thing is not the product and service, it's the people to drive it. Secondly, the institutions that are bringing the future workforce into the labor market. And thirdly, the role of the staffing and recruiting company. So we see that as a challenge, but also an opportunity as a company in the HR services industry to start skilling.
Okay, so talking of skilling, what are you doing at Randstad?
So we're on the cusp now. We're actually just beginning on this journey and in our next stage of evolution. We've adopted a new brand promise called Human Forward. Mm-hmm. And in the spirit of this, it's taking people forward in their lives and in their career. Okay. And so we've said it's time for us to get involved with this. And so it's early days, but we're looking at IT skilling, for example. The skills, if you look to what happened in 2017, first time in modern history in India, where IT professionals were being laid off and cut.
Yeah.
And that was a real shock for a lot of people. Someone who built their entire career as a Java programmer suddenly wasn't needed. Now, the good news is these people, IT professionals, are extremely agile. They're lifelong learners. And so we've been supporting on reskilling and putting into other industries.
Okay. I also want to talk about innovation and what innovation really means to you at Randstad, and for the industry that you are associated with, what is innovation?
Well, we've gone through quite a journey where we embrace technology. We launched a fund called the Randstad Innovation Fund, a venture fund where we've either invested in or acquired companies in technology around HR services and HR technology. And that's everything from AI to chatbots and so on, and RPA. At Randstad, we've adopted this notion, which is really in our heart and soul, that tech enables better touch.
Okay.
And the companies in India that are getting it, when we talk about talent attraction, development and retention, are also following something similar.
Okay.
They're not relying on virtual communication. They're not relying on omni-channel. They're actually pushing more on the face-to-face approach to engaging with their teams.
How's your industry and what is your industry really doing about the intersection of digital technology and staffing or HR solutions?
I think first it's important to understand that the industry in India is highly fragmented.
Very fragmented.
There are 25,000 plus registered staffing and recruiting companies in India. There's no regulatory body in India, and of course there's no data protection law, although we have hints that it may come sometime in India in the near future. So with that in mind, there's quite a wide variety of approaches in the industry,
sure,
and in terms of also compliance and best practices. Let's say the leading companies in our industry, both Indian and multinationals, are approaching technology in the same light that I explained earlier. That technology is an enabler. Technology helps companies attract, connect with, hire and retain talent, but still no replacement for that face-to-face connection. And we see that as a trend in the industry.
So I noticed that you are at about 4.5% in terms of market share here in India. And as we're winding down this conversation, I want to talk about where you see yourself headed, what sort of market share you're looking at, what do you think is going to bring you that growth?
Well, we recently became #1 in the industry, which was quite a turning point for Randstad, again, as a company that was started in a small town in the Netherlands, now in 39 countries. We have big plans for this part of the world, and India is clearly a shining light when you talk about the APAC region and the extended area. As a growing economy, a growing workforce, the ease of doing business index, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is a great time to be in the HR services industry. And with that in mind, we are looking at investing in India. Certainly we're growing organically, and we have an ambitious growth plan. And we have some new innovative products and solutions we'll be launching soon. Certainly recruitment process outsourcing, which is kind of a new offering here in the market. We've brought our Randstad SourceRight brand in. We plan to, again, drive that aggressively next year. We're looking at bringing in some of the technologies from the Randstad Innovation Fund as well. So 2019 is shaping up to a pretty exciting year for Randstad.
Speaking of which, I noticed you've said that 2019 is going to be a robust year as far as hiring in the Indian market is concerned. It's going to be a good time for people who are entering the workplace. As a part of that, also the government has recently announced a scheme for small businesses, MSMEs, where they've said that a loan up to 1 crore will be sanctioned under 59 minutes, which means that it's definitely going to create more jobs. I understand that is you're of a similar view as well. What are some of the trends you're picking up for 2019?
So we clearly see some growth trends in infrastructure, energy and construction.
Okay.
And also, if you think about a rising workforce with increasing disposable income, retail and fast-moving consumer goods is also going to be a strong industry in terms of hiring.
All right, Paul. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
Time for a break. NTT Data Services is our second disruptor tonight, an exclusive conversation with the company on the other side. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching this very special show. Broadcast1 presents Disruptors. Consistently named as a leader in its space by various experts over the past few years, NTT Data Services is innovating and disrupting in its space while maintaining its leadership position. I caught up with Bob Pryor, the CEO of NTT Data Services, to talk about the aggressive acquisition spree that they've been on over the past few years, what the future is looking like, as well as their advice for those of you watching this interview about disrupting in your industries. Take a listen. Bob, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us here on ET Now. It's always exciting to talk to global majors like yourself that are so deeply involved in innovation and disruption. I want to start by talking about NTT Data Services as a global organization, as well as NTT, the global company. Just give us a brief sense of the kind of journey and the growth that you've seen.
So my business, NTT Data Services, we're about 50,000 people, 40 countries. And primarily we're an IT services company, so across infrastructure, application, BPO. Our parent company, NTT, is about a $106 billion company, 280,000 people, everything from telecommunications to Docomo, a mobile phone company primarily in Japan, so a very wide disparate group of businesses, a true conglomerate.
Sure. I want to talk about the India picture, and I understand you have about 25,000 employees based in India. How crucial is India to you at NTT Data Services? What's the kind of vision, the kind of growth plan that you have for the domestic market?
Okay. So I would say India has been a huge part of our business and company and industry for many, many years. My first trips date back to the late 90s. And over the last 10 years, we've done a number of acquisitions. So as we've grown, our population probably 10, 15 years ago would have been less than 1,000. Today, 25,000. So rapid growth. India is a big part of every aspect of our business, from solutions, delivery, to transformation, to innovation. So it is in every pocket of what we do. So a huge part of our business, our culture, our people, and how we serve our clients.
I want to talk about innovation, and innovation is crucial to what the industry is doing, whereas also specifically you're deeply involved in what is happening by way of innovation and disruption. Let's talk innovation. What does innovation mean to you?
You know, it's really, it goes beyond an incremental change. It is, how do you disrupt an industry? How do you change the way you deliver services for people around the world? How do you make life better for people in their communities? And people are always finding a new way of doing something dramatically different than the way we've historically done it. So if you think of efficiency, it's doing roughly the same thing at a different cost or productivity. Innovation is doing it completely differently. And that's a big part of what we're doing. We're seeing disruption every aspect of our business and our clients' business across every industry geography. Innovation is driving that.
Okay, can you be innovative without being disruptive?
Possibly. That's a good question. I think with innovation comes disruption, though, because the challenge that you have to really beat is status quo. So when clients are making a decision, deciding, do I want to do this with, say, NTT Data, I'm competing most often with status quo. I'm representing change, and so part of that change comes risk, but also great reward and opportunity.
Beyond just talking about innovation and disruption as terms, as words, do you think that from what you've been seeing here in India, and you were talking about how you've been traveling to India now over many years, do you think a lot of Indian companies are innovating and disrupting no matter what industry they're in?
You know, if you look at just the number of tech startups here, if you look at the number of people, so India today probably represents something 15 to 20% of all the digital new applications, capabilities being delivered around the world are coming from India. If you look at innovation startups,
sure,
some of the biggest, most successful companies getting created in our industry are coming from India, and they're changing the way we as consumers benefit.
And one thing that I definitely want to talk about is the availability of talent, which for your industry is extremely crucial. Are you happy with the kind of people that you're finding in India?
In this country, you have 4 million jobs that are basically IT services related jobs. 25 years ago, that would have been less than 1 million. So massive growth. I'm sorry, less than probably even 500,000. So massive growth. But I don't have a single client, partner, supplier in the world where some of my constituents aren't Indian. Okay. So CFOs, CTOs, CIOs, heads of businesses in US and Western Europe and Asia Pacific, many of them are also Indian. So as a group of citizens, not just within this country, but around the world, it's probably one of the largest groups representing my industry, which is the IT services industry. So it's a big part of not only what we do here, but around the world.
Okay, so then how would you respond to the fact that NASSCOM, the IT industry body here in India, came out with a report that said only 20 to 25% of all students coming out of colleges today have the requisite skill sets for the jobs for which they're being hired, which forces then companies like yourself to extensively train on the job?
You know, but I think we could probably say the same if they were coming out of schools in the US and others. And so the question for me is, have we defined well enough what the skills and requirements are? Okay. And then what can they develop within, the undergraduate university program or graduate schools versus what we do?
Sure.
And it's not like you get perfectly trained people for everything you do. So part of the job of business is to fill in the gaps with training, developing, and additional skilling.
Besides the fact that you're present in so many countries across the world, you're also very active when it comes to M&A. And when you're doing M&A, you are working with different cultures.
Right.
How do you ensure that you're taking everyone along to ensure that there's that homogeneous culture?
The first part is you want an alignment of your values, your priorities, your principles, your objectives. And so you want to be well aligned. You want people that respect the culture of our company, and we can respect the culture wherever they're coming from. And you want a shared vision of what are we trying to do together. And again, it's part of clients first, the foresight and the insight, and also the trust that we have of working together on behalf of our clients and our markets. And as long as you've got those fundamental values and those premises that by which we operate, you can have a great acquisition of bringing great talent in and then accelerating whatever you think you're going to do.
Sure. Reports suggesting that you are quite actively interested and involved in data center construction, at least as far as your clients are concerned, in the US, Europe, and APAC. So if you could talk to us about what your plans there are, and then specifically talk about India and what your plans are.
So very similar, continuing to build infrastructure, which is computing environments, network environments. Because what allows India to have 4 million people serving clients all over the world is great technology, great infrastructure, great network. It's network and bandwidth that created so much of what is global delivery today. So now we're moving into a phase from what's called 4G to 5G. 5G opens up even bigger opportunities for us to drive the next wave of technology and integration.
That India may have largely been seen as a base for ADM workers, but now you're increasingly seeing more high-value work really being done out of India. What's your own experience been?
India represents almost every aspect of our career architecture. So from infrastructure apps and BPO, from entry level to senior executive. In fact, the head of all of my automation, my tooling for my infrastructure business is a man here named Neeraj. He also has all my solution architects that build the solutions I'm selling to clients. So think of it not just as one narrow little scope, it is every aspect of everything we do.
You were a member of the core team that met with Prime Minister Modi when he was in the US last year, meeting with Indians in America, talking largely to people who are in the tech space. If there may be one thing that you would like to see in India here by way of infrastructure, by way of things really changing on the ground for the tech industry, what would it be?
You know, he created an incredibly exciting vision of digital India. And digital India means you've got to build out the infrastructure that allows you to be digital. So I'd love to see, government and business work together to build that core infrastructure, not just the computing, the network, but also even the roads, the utilities, the facilities, because there's going to continue to be massive growth here, but you got to plan and prepare for it. It's coming. It's either going to come where you're well prepared and organized, or it's going to come a little bit more chaotically.
Sure.
But it's coming.
My last question to you then is really talking about what the future is looking like for your NTT Data Services, both globally, but then particularly talking about the India picture. What's on the plate that's exciting?
So growth. Growing and moving from, I would say, my industry in the last 20 years has been too predicated on cost. So labor arbitration, cost, productivity. This next wave is all around innovation, disruption, new technology, delivering services in a very different way. We're moving to what I would call an as-a-service model. Everything is as a service. So when you buy Uber, that's as a service. When you buy your data plan, that's as a service. So moving to an outcome-based as a service in almost every aspect of our lives, that's where the technology landscape's going. And it creates great growth and great opportunities for people that can deliver on that premise.
All right, Bob. Thanks very much for your time here on ET Now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That's our show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, as always, we love hearing from you. Do get in touch. leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com is our email ID. Get in touch with us on our Twitter handle. Sunanda_J is my personal Twitter handle. LOT_ET Now is our official Twitter handle. Get in touch with us on Facebook, Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. As per the new tri-tariff order, you now have the power to choose and pay only for the channels you love. To keep watching Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, call your cable or DTH operator and get the Times movies and news pack now.
The showstoppers, the jaw droppers, the movers and shakers.
These are some of the hard facts.
The power players. All the blockbusters. All the hard hitters in one power punch.
That's awesome.
Complete your TV viewing experience with the best of Hollywood entertainment and news. Get the Times movies and news pack at just 13 rupees. Ask your cable or DTH provider now.